Are we live?
We're going live now. Yeah.
Mm,
Don't say anything embarrassing from
okay.
now on.
Why not?
You can say it, but as long as you don't mind saying it, as long as you don't mind
Okay.
saying it, it's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Then you can say something embarrassing if you want. Just don't. Yeah. You. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but just
Be ready
know
to
that.
see
Okay. Yeah.
it.
So I'm. There's no. That's the good thing about YouTube is that there's no censorship. We can say whatever we want, pretty much. And that's also the bad thing about social media, but it's a double-edged sword.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm actually like kind of on time.
You are, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're starting early. I think because it's Vladimir was telling me that it doesn't really help him that much, like 1 hour difference. So we'll probably go back to the starting a week
Oh,
later next week.
oh, okay.
So yeah.
Hmm. It doesn't
How,
really matter to me as long as I know what. Like,
yeah, of course. How's it going, Natasha?
it's busy. It's always busy around here.
Busy?
Always busy. We are planning a garage building project, and I'm finishing the ceiling, and I just got done wiring in some new outlets and switch for the fitness room, and we're having some people put in some epoxy flooring.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like where they pour it
Oh, yeah.
and make like designs in it.
Resin. Yeah.
So there's that, which means we have to take everything out of that area. And we're babysitting my dad's dog. So that means that I basically have to baby proof every square inch of my property.
Yeah.
So that's a big undertaking. Because it's a bloodhound, it's a cocker spaniel. So it will find and chew on everything. Luckily it's short, so it can't like take things off the tables, but everything that is accessible it chews. And he also doesn't have it really trained very well, so if you let it out it just runs off. Basically like babysitting a whimsical child, I guess. So.
We had some friends coming over, and so we baby proofed the house, but the baby still got in.
1 second.
That probably would be so funny if I actually know what small babies, what kind of terrors they can be. I wish I'd known about that. Yeah.
Toddlers are worse. They're always worth it, but
Well, I mean, it depends on the toddler. Like my first was a great toddler. He was so well mannered, such a good listener. My second was a toddler for like, I swear, 3 years straight, and she's still working on it. She's almost 5. So I don't know. I think it depends a lot on the kid, but yeah, the toddler years are they're tough. But honestly, I'm not a baby person. At least with toddlers, like you can speak some words and get an idea of what they want and what you expect. Whereas with babies, it's just they're screaming and you have to like do this deductive reasoning while listening to the screaming, and I don't do well with that. I don't. It's the noise is not good for me. So toddler was better than baby for me.
I can relate. It's an ancient memory, but I still.
I was just doing the final baby preparations because I'm in the baby's room, so I had to make sure.
We get to see baby?
Huh?
We get to see baby?
Do you want to see baby real quick? Okay.
Well, not if she's sleeping.
I like babies when I'm not
When
responsible
they're not
for them
close.
24/7.
Okay. Okay. You 1 second.
Do you have children, Vladimir?
No, I don't have. I'm, I actually don't like babies, to be honest.
Well,
I would-
as you can tell, we have misgivings too.
Yeah, I was a terrible kid.
You know, the mom doesn't want her to be on camera, so
That's
Oh.
understandable. That's
when it's not
understandable.
recording.
That's totally legit.
So
Yeah.
she's looking very cute though. So when we're not recording, I'll show her to you. Not today, probably, because she'll be hopefully asleep.
Mm.
But yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Well, are you guys ready to start chatting away about something other than babies?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's do it. All right. So we can start by talking about hope, which is the topic you're doing with your other group to this week, Vladimir. So, what got you so interested on the topic of hope, Vladimir? Like, why is it something that you really wanted to talk about?
Well, it was chosen by the group, but I found that one of the most interesting questions is how hope can be used for manipulation, and how people are actually manipulated by this, other people who give them hope. It's quite easy to sell empty hopes and make you believe in something, but no, I find it quite, like in my experience, for example, many people speak that hope gives them positive feeling and they like it. But in my experience, I found it, because I put in this dialogue, there were many examples where hope led me into troubles, and I was relying too much on the expectations of some positive events, but in the end, it only caused troubles. And I'm curious, like why we have these expectations about the future, which sometimes may be totally misleading, and what actually like where does hope come from? Does it come from experience, or does it come from knowledge, or does it come from, is it rational or irrational? Basically, all sorts of questions.
What's your take? Where does it come from?
Well, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. We'll try to figure out. Yeah.
Well, I think it's possible that there's different kinds of hope. Buying a lottery ticket and hoping you win the lottery, and organizing your life around the hope that you're going to win something that
It's
the
not
odds
smart.
are so stacked against you that's pretty reckless, if you ask me. But the hope that you can take the beach when you invade Normandy is a good hope, and you don't want to lose that.
Yeah,
So that's two different kinds of hope.
why
There may be more, but that's two different kinds.
why do we use the same name for these?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, it's because I would say it's because, well, two things. I think even though they're different cases, the two cases that you just mentioned, I would say they're similar in the sense that they're in both cases you're talking about expectations, right? It's you're using the word hope as the expectations that one might have. You could even talk about hope in a different sense that is not just expectations. And to answer your question, Vladimir, why do we use the same word for different things? This is a common problem, right? In discussions, and that's just I think it comes down to why do we use the same word to talk about different things for anything else? Is because language is flawed. It's a linguistic problem.
And similarly, we use words that one would normally associate with violence to describe a point of view. You know, Congress doesn't argue; they fight. You know, and those are two different things to me. You know, to me, a fight is something you want to win, and an argument you want to win over the other person. That's a difference. But we use the same words. You know, for and for example, in politics, we say that we're going to fight the good fight, and we take a strong position, and we, you know.
Yeah, language is, I mean, it's never going to be exact. That's why, you know, when we're talking about courage, right? I mean, you kind of like these things, when we're talking about some very basic elements, you know, when you reduce it to like very elemental things, you're always going to have to define it at first. Or at least people need to kind of like figure out what they're talking about, because, you know, language is so slippery and tricky. Like, what is art? You know, for example, you know, you can use the word art to talk about 10 different things, which are not, you know, really the same.
I think with hope, yeah, exactly. I don't think hope is necessarily as tied to expectations as it is perhaps like a necessary part of consciousness, because if you think about having consciousness, that allows you to also engage with the things that you don't know. And how do people cope with all of the unknowns? The more you think about it, the more you can come up with the things that you can't answer, especially things that you can't control. And I think hope is basically what our brain decides to do with the answers that we know we don't know and the things that we know we can't control. Because I'm having a hard time envisioning a consciousness without hope. You know, you can have other people, you can rely on other people's hope. And I think hope is very, very much tied to dreaming, you know, trying to say, I mean, even in the most primitive sense, let's say humans go out to slay some buffalo or the woolly mammoth, or, you know, whatever, let's go way back. And they have consciousness. They can take so many measures to make sure that the hunting goes well. But what gets them past the fear of all the things that could go very wrong? You know, fear of loss of life, loss of family, loss of the meal itself. And I think that's that necessary hope that you've done as many preparations as possible. Whatever else is out of your control, and you're just going to have to go in and do it, and hope for the best. And I think it might be an inevitable piece of having consciousness.
Do you think it's rational, like when you have hope, or it comes from somewhere else? I mean, is it rational? Hello, Michael.
Hello, Michael. Michael's just joining us. Michael,
we're
starting the conversation talking about.
Yeah, can you explain hope in like rational terms, or it's just some predisposition which you have intrinsically, or?
Yes, I'm saying it's a necessary chemical reaction with a logical brain. Mm-hmm. So if you are able to logic all of the things that could go wrong, what is going to keep you moving at all? It's going to be the fact that you can count on unknown things going well, basically. And that would just be what hope is.
So it's kind of optimistic mindset, right?
It's planning on taking actions, continuing to even live based on the assumption that some things will go well enough for you to continue living in the first place if you take action. Whereas I think without hope, you could come up with so many reasons to not even bother.
So when you say necessary for life, not logically necessary, but necessary for beings to exist, to continue to exist, I guess.
Well, I think it's necessary for a logical mind. I don't think, ants need hope, for example. They don't need to believe that it's going to go well. They just follow instructions. They don't logic their way through it. They have instincts and they follow hierarchy. Perhaps it's not, I don't know. I'm not ready to say that it's part of the logic process, except that your brain already realizes that if you don't come up with a good answer, then you probably won't do anything. Because again, of how many things that you can come up with that could go wrong. At some point you have to decide if the odds are equal, or if the odds are negative, but it's a difference between life and death, or life and starve, that you have to find something else that gets you to pick survive, because that's in most species is finding something that solves this survival solution.
That's interesting how the concept evolved throughout history. For example, in ancient times in Greece, it was basically considered as something negative, as something that pushes you to do actions which actually don't lead anywhere. It's like Plato called it mindless advisor. And for Stoics, it was considered as something like fear. Seneca wrote about hope, and I can read just little passage from Seneca. They are bound up with one another, unconnected as they may seem. Widely different though they are, the two of them march in unison like a prisoner and the escort he is handcuffed to. Fear keeps pace with hope, nor does their so moving together surprise me. Both belong to a mind in suspense, to a mind in a state of anxiety through looking into the future. Both are mainly due to projecting our thoughts far ahead of us instead of adapting ourselves to the present. So basically, what he wants to say is that when you think too much about the future, you other fear dictates you all these as negative as positive ideas, but they all are unrealistic because you just go ahead and you disconnect from reality, from present, from you don't pay attention to what's going on right now.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting, we really talk about hope more during times of hardship than when things are going well. It's like if you just won the lottery and you're on a cruise and everything's going great, you don't say, I am so hopeful. Hope is usually when you're going through a rough time. I remember the Jews in the Holocaust, as they were marching to the gas chambers, they would sing a song about the Messiah coming. So that was them still having hope or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of what I think.
There's another interesting story, this Pandora box, where she opened the box and all evil things flew out of the box, but hope remained at the bottom.
I remember that.
Yeah, and there's kind of different interpretations. From one side, hope is the great thing, and it helps you to live in a world of evil. But on the other side, for example, Nietzsche interpreted in a way that hope was the worst of evils, and it just keeps you going. Zeus, it was actually Zeus who put all these evils into the box, and like he wants humans suffer, and hope just keeps them like, well, it's hope actually prevents you from ending up all this suffering, which was kind of, maybe suicide. I don't know exactly what Zeus want human to do, but it's not just about everybody, right? It's when you are in a terrible situation, and hope like gives you reason to continue living, but maybe you don't need to live. What if you just you may just die, or like there's the question about
Boy, that's bleak, Vladimir.
It's very
yeah the question about
I
the
like-
value of life. Like, does it have value when you are where most of your life is suffering, and you have hope, you think, oh, maybe it's going to be better, but what if not? What if it's not going to be better? What if just it's better to have nothing than to have life which is like terrible. And now of course conditions are better, but how they lived 2,000 years ago, it's like you may just be born a slave and be the whole life a slave and die, and like an animals on farm.
Well, but that kind of goes back to what Michael was saying, that and I think you kind of like touched on something that is important for hope, Michael, which is the time it really makes sense to talk about hope is when one is in a condition that is not great. It's in the time of hardship. And like slaves, for example, like Vladimir was saying, or people in the Holocaust. I mean, when you're in a position of that you're powerless, a lot of those people, the only way you can get through something like that is if you do hold on to some hope, right? That things will get better, that you will be in a different position, a better position in the future. And that
Yeah,
can apply to
usually
whole societies as well.
we usually take them as heroes, those who can endure all this suffering and still continue living, and inspire other people, saying like, that's great, I suffered, but now like I got through all of this, and I may give you hope for the future. But why it's like, if you ask this question, why it's really heroic or courageous to maintain life when it like doesn't that which there's only suffering and pretty low chances to to get somewhere where you won't suffer.
Well, not everyone who suffers thinks that their life isn't worth living because of the suffering. And I think
It's
that's
actually
really
again, it's actually vice versa. So the more you suffer,
right,
the more
exactly. So even within the Holocaust, not everybody was thinking about how, not everyone was thinking about how much they wanted it to end. They would work to inspire each other, and some of the stories actually lived on and made it out of the Holocaust. Not every, there were some people who made it, and having the strength of the people who tried to maintain and encourage hope also
Viktor Frankl
made it out. And that kind of, I think, getting the wisdom from survivors is really important to the development of the human race. I think if everybody, when suffering happened, just gave up, I don't think we'd really have I don't think humans would survive at all, and much less evolve.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think it's the mechanism that we have, and I'm not really sure if it's biological or not, but it's a mechanism that people that survive really well tend to have. They tend to have the capacity to hope instead of plummeting. Because if you have no hope in a bad situation, I mean, you have your chances are not very good.
And being on the suffering end also of, it gives rise to the opportunity to re-educate everyone else, the rest of the species, how getting to that point maybe can be changed, could have been avoided, because these events don't just happen out of nowhere. They're caused by any number of things, like all things, and trying to survive through them offers an opportunity to educate and spare other people and place a hope in the development of the human race. And I think that's
in hardship.
big
What you're saying, like what you're saying is very relevant, because it's not just about true situations in humankind's history. I mean, everybody goes through hardship at some point, even like prosperous societies. I mean, look at the United States, the richest country in the world, just recently went through a depression in 2008. So I mean, this is a hardship is actually. I think we probably don't see that as much because we have a safety net but I mean, probably, any other generation, I mean, people went through hardship, like that's kind of like part of the 100,000 years of evolution for humans is, you go through a lot of hardship, and sometimes things are a little bit better.
I wouldn't say America is being spared from hardship. I mean, when we've got this epidemic of...
Well, I'm not talking about America. I'm talking about the world.
Well, I was going to bring up school shootings.
I'm talking about the modern... I'm talking about the modern world. People have more prosperity, right? The modern world. But, even up until World War II, I mean, look at all the things that happen, even like somewhat prosperous societies, people went through a lot of hardship all over the world. So I'm not really sure if you would have made it this far without some degree of hope.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in both Judaism and Christianity, there's the idea of the Messiah, and probably other religions might have something similar, but that's kind of like the ultimate hope, where it's like, no matter how bad, and in fact, not only that, they say that right before the Messiah comes, will be like in an age where it's like as bad as possible and where everything is just terrible. So it's like, that's kind of like the ultimate hope, where like the worse the situation you are in, that means that the Messiah is going to come soon and they'll save us all. You know what I mean?
I mean,
it also relates to the concept of faith, right?
Of what?
Faith.
Faith, yeah.
Yeah.
Religion is very, there's a big connection between modern religions and hope, Judaism, Christianity. I mean, those are religions founded by powerless people that needed hope, and religion provided them with hope.
Yeah, but this the question shifts to like manipulation, how you can be manipulated by those who sell you hopes, and you may just first you may do it even like you give people hope, and then you kind of get power, which like people start relying on you, and then probably like you may you use it in a bad sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the fact that it's so necessary is what makes it so useful, rather than it just being convenient. For example, like you can also control people by limiting other necessary resources like food and water and safety. You can manipulate people with a lot of things, and it's especially strong if it's necessary. And I think that just speaks to how necessary hope is to the human mind, rather than just being like this weakness. It could be that we, as a society, or even as a generation, don't quite grasp the nature and the value of hope, and maybe we never have. Maybe it's never really been totally written out how hope connects with what we need, like the basic needs, I'm talking about the hierarchy of stuff. So because there's manipulation is definitely possible with a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, because you can look, hope, in that sense, it's like dreams, people's dreams. So people's dreams have certainly value, because it moves people forward. It allows people to build a life, because you can't really do much if you don't have dreams to start with. But obviously, those dreams can be manipulated. Those dreams can be perverted. Those dreams can be used as an instrument against people, against the people that have manufactured the dreams in the first place. But that doesn't mean there is no value to dreams, right? And I think that same thing
Yeah.
applies to hope.
Yeah, there may be like different situations, and that's why we may start again from definition of hope, because sometimes we just apply it, like we use the word for like different situation, as if it was kind of like maybe one hope, and you just use the word to describe, like, oh, okay, I'm in trouble, and I believe in the future, that in the future is going to be good, and it's hope. And then it's like in daily sense, in a trivial sense, it may be something different. So you use the same word, hope, but it may be something different. What helps you, like it may be a dream, it may be a desire, it may be just expectation.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's like in my experience, as I said, there was like in many times it led to frustrations. So you have hope, and then you think that it's gonna go better, but doesn't go, and you still rely on hope. You still believe that, oh, okay, now next time probably, like in gambling, as I wrote in this dialogue. So it actually was like I was addicted to gambling for 2 years, and every time you see there just pushing buttons, and oh, now I probably I'll win, but then you like everything goes down, and hope still keeps you coming back, and you like such mechanism which is so like,
Yeah, if we're talking about unrealistic expectations, right? I think it's a different thing. That's the thing, going back to the flaws in linguistics. We're not necessarily always talking about the same thing, because like in gambling, I guess we're talking about hope in some sense, that you're hoping that you're gonna win. But I think in
but isn't
gambling,
the same mechanism? I mean, like when you are in terrible situation and you think about better future, it's like and when you just in a normal situation you think about something that will improve your situation, isn't that the same mechanism which pushes you?
It's somewhat the same mechanism, but in gambling, it's also a matter of strategy. It's like a general, for example. A good general probably doesn't want to be too hopeful about things. He wants to win the battle, of course, but you're probably not going to win a battle or a war. If you're always expecting the best case scenario to materialize, right? I mean, because the truth is, the best case scenario doesn't always materialize. So you have to have contingencies, right? And when we're talking about anything strategy, it can be gambling, or it can be, say, money, it can be war, it can be politics. I mean, contingencies are kind of important for strategy, right? Because you have to account for risk, you have to account for failure. So hope in those cases is, it needs to be very contained. It needs to be a contain hope, let's say, contain high expectations.
I think it's more.
Go on.
I think it would say it's more like, say, when you're hoping for these things, like the more you understand about yourself and about hope, the better you can. So when you choose to gamble, it's not necessarily you're hoping to win necessarily. You're hoping to solve something. You're hoping for a better life or better financial situation, or you're hoping for, I think like, especially addiction is a little bit, isn't necessarily about hope, but anyway, if you were going to gamble, it's not only a means to an end. You're hoping for the money, right? You're hoping for the financial relief. It's just the chosen tactic
but
is gambling. And I don't think hope can necessarily give you, like, if you don't think about what you want, it doesn't solve your logic process. It doesn't make you make good choices to getting what you hope for. But it's not the hope itself that's the problem. It's that you choose, you don't necessarily think through your choices because maybe you're desperate for the thing that you hope for. And desperation can actually create really oppressive effects on your brain. And there's a lot of studies about it coming out, especially when they talk about the cycle of poverty in America, how not having basic needs and being in a state of desperation actually reduces your IQ by a lot. It's a lot. And so it's, I think the desperation is what feeds into bad choices. It's the chemical negative reaction. It's trying to run away from depression. It's trying to run away from things. It's not the hope that's leading you the wrong way. It's feeling cornered, and maybe not being able to separate the hope from the tactic.
Yeah, but the question is, if you really choose, because hope and reason in this case, they may compete with each other. And it's very hard to control this mechanism since you're, yeah.
I just think, personally, if you investigate what your hope is and you extrapolate it a little bit wider, you can end up finding out that there are multiple veins to getting to what you hope for. So if you really hope, you're dating somebody and you really hope that you guys are gonna live together and they're gonna want to be with you forever, and you hope that that's gonna work out. What you really hope for is to have companionship. What you hope for is to have a life full of love and understanding. That's probably actually what you, if it's this person or if it's another person, what you're probably, I don't know if you're like, if you were actually fixated on this person, no matter whether you got love or hope or whether you got companionship, if it was just this person, no matter how they treated you, like that would be a little weird. That it was the person you hope for. So I think being able to understand that hope is having good things, and once you realize it's wanting to have good things, then you realize that there's actually a wealth of avenues to get good things for yourself.
Yeah, you mentioned before necessities. So it's like when we discussed manipulation, it seems that for life we don't need too much. Like basically what we need is just food, shelter, some human connections, and hope. It actually makes you think about the future, and you want more and more. So you have more desires, and then as soon as you may fulfill these desires, you have more desires, and then it's like the question is, what's necessary for you, and what's extra things. Why do you need everything if you may have some basic things and live with them? Like, and hope.
I'm confused, and maybe you all can help me, because in the last 5 minutes we've heard hope used to describe the emotions of a successful general, when really, in my view, we're talking about confidence, strategy, and tactics. And yet we're using the same word to describe that as we are to describe hoping you will win at gambling. or that somebody will go out with you. You know, the language fails us here, I think. So you all help me figure out which one we're talking about.
Well,
Or are
for
they
me,
the
for
same?
me at the moment, hope is a lot simpler thing. I hope the chemotherapy is successful and my wife survives. That's hope.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Craig. Welcome to the conversation. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
hope is yeah, I mean, we all hope that, Craig. I mean, it's yeah, but I think it's in those cases, you know, it's in those cases, and it's gonna go well, man. It's gonna work out. It's in those cases that it's really a mechanism, you know, and it allows us to actually make those things real, to make those things true, you know, because a lot of the great things that happen in life like that, you know, you gotta dream them first, right? You gotta dream these things first, and then they happen. And that's why it's such a powerful mechanism.
Yeah, although this whole kind of law of attraction thing, no, that ain't gonna work. That's not how stuff works. So no, I'm not gonna go down that route.
But
I'm gonna
sometimes
have
it is.
I'm gonna have confidence in the doctors who are doing recommendations here. I've met the surgeon, I've met the oncologist, and they both seem like top-notch people in their field. And I'm going to trust to their training. And, you know, it's either going to work or it isn't. And in truth, whether I hope or not is irrelevant, but I'm going to do it anyway because I need it for me. I don't need it for the process. I need it for myself and my own emotional well-being. And that's what I think hope ultimately is really about, is it is a person trying to take care of their own emotional well-being.
But is it the best mechanism to take care of your own emotional well-being?
I don't know. It depends on, right? It's context dependent, like everything else is context dependent. It might be the best in some cases and it might not in others.
Yeah, but you said like you've done everything possible, and if like it's inevitable, like whatever happens, yeah, whatever happen will happen. So if it's gonna help you, like when you think about your own condition and when you have these expectations, it's like for now it helps. But if there's a negative result, like
if there's a negative result, then you need to be prepared to deal with the negative result if and when the negative result occurs. Right?
Vladimir, what do you think the choices are?
Well, I don't believe in choices, by the way. It's
well, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I'm saying if not hope, then what?
Well, what are the options here?
I think for me, it's this idea of amor fati. So you basically rely on what's going on reality, and you don't think too much in the future. It was what I quoted, like from Seneca. So you basically accept everything what's going on, and you see it through, like, as if it was inevitable, through these lenses. And yeah, and it doesn't mean that you don't believe in future and think that all future is going to be negative or whatever. Just, okay, it's like consciousness. You said it, like consciousness, like to have consciousness. For me, consciousness, it's more about understanding. It's not about creating something in the future. I believe that past and future, they're kind of inseparable. So it's our perception which actually makes it kind of, it projects our expectations into the future and creates this dream or whatever. But for me, it's mostly like the law of causes and effects. So whatever happened in the past creates what's going to happen in the future. And I'm not relying on my expectations. I'm relying on my understanding. So my point is just to understand better what's going on and find the best way, the best strategy, how to adapt myself to the reality.
Can you have
you are kind of what the philosophers would call a hard determinist.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
yes.
like
I am not. I used to be a hard determinist, and I realized that I don't think that's how things work anymore. So,
Well, Carl, I'm writing journals for pretty much 10 years now, like everything.
Can you have opinions?
Opinions
Mm.
about what?
Can you have opinions? Okay. Well, I see a in your model, I see an inconsistency if you have opinions. I think that opinions are, if you accept having opinions, then you accept having hope. I think they
I
are right. So I think that they're connected. So that's why I asked if you think having opinions is
well, yeah, I
part of the
might have
process.
I might have an opinion, but like if reality proves them wrong, I rely on reality, not on my opinions.
What about the ones that you never can prove?
Well, you still have an opinion.
For example.
I mean, how when you go to the store and you decide what you want to eat tomorrow, do you grab literally anything, or do you go, I remember liking ham. This has ham in it. I hope it's good. I'm going to buy this because I have had history of liking ham. You like ham. I just don't know if you can separate any ounce of hope from a human experience.
It's kind of inductive reasoning. So it's like, if a similar situation happened in the past, you expect that it might happen again if under the same conditions.
Mm.
I guess I don't see inductive well, maybe you liked ham in the past just because it was a good, I mean, maybe your biology just likes ham and it was a good feeling. And so then by, I don't know, by inductive reasoning, you just extrapolate it and say ham again will likely be good. That doesn't.
I'm saying basically that hope is not a spiritual process. I'm saying it's a chemical process. I'm saying it's already it's inside of you, whether you like it or not, and you are motivated by it because it has been part of the human consciousness since that what became a thing. That's basically what I've been saying.
Right, but you may train your reason to make it stronger than your hope. So again, it's for me, it's two competing mechanisms. Your hope tells you to do one thing, and your reason may tell you like to do another thing. And whether you rely on hope or on reason, you like make a decision. And in my case, I prefer to rely on reason rather than on hope. So it's like whatever my mind projects in the future, if it's really important decision, if it's about going in store and buying some food, of course I may rely on hope. That's okay. But
I would say in that scenario that you're giving, your hope is actually you have two hopes. It's not that you have one hope and you go with reason. It's that you have two hopes. You have one hope that's maybe more emotionally charged, and you have the other hope, which is to be right, or to be not hurt, or to be not disappointed. So you have it's not that you are picking against hope, it's that you are picking between two hopes, or hope and fear.
I guess it's more like what you
not having this thing, fear of hurting from not having this thing.
Yeah, I guess it's like what you described. It looks like this dichotomy between intuitive thinking and logical thinking. So, or like, there's a book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. So in first case, you just automatically choose, and in the second scenario, you're mostly reflective. You think through.
This is my dad's dog is running in and out of the room. It's not a ghost. It's not.
Yeah.
Well, we can also welcome Sashir into the conversation. Is the bar closed here?
What?
Is the bar closed? Is that why you're here?
Yep.
This is the last call.
No, I'm just sitting outside the pub. Can't you tell? Yeah, it's still going.
Where's Dad? or what's the city?
It's the picture is from Derry, Ireland.
What do you mean the picture? That's where you are, right?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
It
getting
looks-
ready for St. Patrick's Day.
It looks very bright, man, but it's, I don't know, it's a little bit weird because it's
Right.
what? It's maybe
I think
1
my
in the
face
morning,
is kind of in shadow.
1 a.m.
Sorry, this is my friend Jeff. She's here visiting.
Hi.
Yeah, she's
Hi
here
there.
at the bar with me. So
Oh, cool.
we're gonna go have a pint later.
How's Ireland?
It's nice. We're out just taking a walk. So
Awesome. Yeah, 1 o'clock in the morning.
45 degrees outside.
That's great. What's your outlook on hope? We've been discussing hope for the last 1 hour.
Ah. Oh, hold on, Jeff. You want to sit down? I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if he'll show up in the. Is the-
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
I have mixed feelings on hope. I feel like hope can be an important tool as long as you use it to figure out when you need to step back and just accept reality.
Yep.
You always need to accept reality, but you need to accept what the reality is. Do you just sit there and accept it and let it be? Or do you find a way to spring action? But I feel like if you're using hope as an excuse to like deny reality, then it's a problem. But
Well,
hope,
well said.
Yeah, I think so. Vladimir was asking like when hope is a virtue, and I feel like it ties into what you just said. I think hope might be virtuous when the negative possibilities that could happen, if those are out of your control and there's really nothing you can do to better prepare or to better handle that, then maybe hope might guide your mindset towards thinking about the things that are in your control. Maybe that's when hope is virtuous, but maybe hope is bad when it's preventing you from doing things that you really do have control over. Like, yeah.
Well, sometimes
so
hope.
basically, sorry.
No,
You
no,
just
go
basically
ahead.
said what I said, but more succinctly.
Okay. Well, sometimes hope motivates people to do stuff, you know, like when you look at history, especially like nations. I've been studying quite a bit of history recently, and like even like what we're talking about before about the Jewish people. I mean, the only reason why Israel is there today is because they were hopeful for 1,000 years that one day they would go back, you know, and this is like those cases where you have to believe it first. You have to believe that it's possible. You have to believe that that's real, and then you make it real. And I mean, the United States is a case of hope, you know, hope that something else can be the case, you know, and it wouldn't really exist if it weren't for that moment of hope. So in nations, you see that a lot. Nations are born out of hope. That's why hope plays, I think, such a big role in the ethos of nations usually, because they really wouldn't be there usually if it weren't for that hope.
So just as another possible way one can look at this, if you believe that the brain and the mind are largely prediction correction mechanisms, that is, you play out scenarios in your mind about potential futures and you evaluate them, hope is basically looking for a best case scenario. Despair is basically looking for a worst case scenario. Of course, most of the time it winds up somewhere in between, but one hopes that one's projected best case scenario is the one that actually comes to fruition, and you make plans based on that. You also maybe have back in the back of your mind the worst case scenario, and you might make contingency plans for that as well. But in that case, the whole question about dragging this in as whether it's a virtue or not, I don't know that I think I care about whether it's a virtue or not. It's it's me calculating what I think my best case scenario is and planning for it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, but in best case scenario, it's basically we want to be more realistic. We want to understand what actually is going to happen, and sometimes
You don't know
maybe,
what's actually going to happen until it happens, so do
yeah,
you?
sure, but sometimes it may be too much hope, and you may calculate, like you may be deluded by your hope and by your
Yeah, but you may not. So,
yeah,
so
but in terms of virtue, so it's better to focus on something that really, like, what is most likely to happen instead of what you wish most likely to happen.
so instead of now being a hard determinist, you're coming more into my camp and becoming a Bayesian, because what a Bayesian will do is one will again project possible futures, see what happens, and then update one's original assumptions about those possible futures based on the results that you see, and incrementally make changes. And that's actually how I think things work, as opposed to things are, determined one way or another. I think things are mostly a matter of prediction and correction. And so I think I do make decisions that can influence my future about whether I can approach the best case or worst case scenario, but I need to do it incrementally. I can't just see the end point and go there because that doesn't work. There are too many intervening events that take place that can disrupt that. But I can go from here, I can go to my next. It's much like doing a search in computer programming. You go from where you are and you follow it to the next best point, and then you're there and you follow that to the next best point. And you can have an influence, I think, on future events by looking at those little tiny optimums and going that way.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
exactly.
know that's a weird way to look at things, but that's the way I look at things.
It's like life, a big chess game, like chess play.
I
So
want to say one thing.
you calculate the steps and you like evaluate your decisions after you make these steps. But yeah, I that's exactly what I'm doing. But it doesn't mean that you can't be a hard determinist. It's like it's more on kind of epistemological level. So you know exactly that all your decisions are based on your previous decisions, and you don't project in the. You may calculate the best possible future, but still, like you understand that your calculations, like they're learned, they're natural, they're
They're my subjective prior probability estimates of what I think is going to happen. And since they are subjective, that means they're subject to change, right?
Yeah, but subjective
by seeing what actually happens.
Subjective is a kind of tricky way. It's like what is subjective? Like I don't see the big difference between subjective and objective.
Okay, subjective probability is basically posing, say you're going to make a bet. All right, you're going to bet that horse XYZ is going to win the race. All right, how confident are you that horse XYZ is going to win the race? That tells you how much money you're going to bet on that horse. That's my subjective probability estimate. And then they run the race and horse XYZ loses. So maybe next time then I'm not going to bet on horse XYZ to win the race. I mean, it's learning, right? That's how we learn, is by making projections and being either right or wrong, which either reinforces the projection or causes you to update your priors, is the term that Bayesians often use to explain that sort of thing. And I'm off in the weeds now, so I'm going to shut up.
Can you share a link? I'll just gonna read a little bit later. This you said Bayesians, who like this
Bayesian, yeah, Bayesian, after the Reverend Thomas Bayes, I believe was his name, who came up with this. And the theory of subjective probability kind of developed throughout the 20th century by a number of people, and makes a great deal of sense to me. In fact, I use it for quantum mechanics and stuff like that I find to be a helpful way of interpreting things. And again, I'm way off in the weeds, so I'm gonna.
You kind of have to use it for quantum mechanics. There's no actual objective prediction in quantum mechanics.
So I want to bring up one thing. Just because something is true doesn't mean that it's worth thinking about. So like, for example, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. That could happen. But the likelihood is small enough that it's not really worth thinking about. There's other things that actually are probably more likely, but I still don't think about it just because there's not really much I can do right now, or it's not worth spending the mental energy on it when I could spend my brain power on things that I have more control over. So I wonder if hope kind of ties in with that, where it's like there's something bad that could happen to you, and maybe there's even a good chance it will, but how much would you be able to affect the outcome, and how much of your brain power is worth spending on that? I think hope might be tied in with that.
Is hope the same as probability?
Maybe. I guess like hope is like there's the actual probability tree, like this could happen in my life, this could happen in my life, but maybe hope nudges what you focus your attention on, because you might have more control over some pieces of that tree than others, I guess.
Vladimir brought up that's having too much hope. And I think I just wanted to touch on that. I think when people use that term, having too much hope, they don't actually mean that literally. I don't think someone who is referred to as having too much hope actually has more hope than, say, anyone else necessarily. It's the reason that it's sort of a negative thing, the too much, is because a person has the thing that they are looking forward to, but they ignore the logical process of preparation for a variety of results. So
there's a difference between being hopeful and being delusional.
Right, exactly. The too much hope if somebody has chosen to become rather delusional instead of just taking hope and doing their best with what they have. They've stopped doing their best with what they have. They've abandoned reason, and in the face of the thing that they hope for that's become a psychological disorder. So I think that's kind of the other edge of the what Michael was getting into, is like having too much, but then also when I forgot what he said. I actually forgot what he said, but it did make sense when you were saying it. I was like, oh, there's like the opposite side, but no, I forgot. So,
but I do think. Go ahead, David.
Nope, we came in from the pub, so we had to turn off the background, or else we'd be ghosting.
Oh, you're home?
yes.
No, I came in from the pub. Yeah,
Yeah, you came back. All right. Well,
it was outdoor seating.
Yeah, like what David said, I think that's pretty relevant. You know, you can still be hopeful, but you don't need to be delusional about things. I mean, I don't think, those are not mutually exclusive. You can understand what the reality is, and at the end of the day, you know, when you're hopeful, you just have a positive outlook. You hope that something is gonna be okay. It's gonna work out in the way you want it to work out. It doesn't mean that you don't understand that, it might not be the case. Those are not mutually exclusive.
Strangely enough, when you strengthen your expectation, like you have a hope, and then you have a positive result, and then your hope grows bigger. And next time when you need to make a decision, you rely on your hope. And every time it's like when you strengthen your hope, like you get more and more delusional. Like eventually, if you always rely on hope and you have positive results, like you come to this opposite pole when you become delusional because you believe in something, like in your luck, or it's not already hope, it's like your good fortune, or your if it works for you. So imagine, like, again,
That just sounds like deductive reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
if you do something and it keeps working, like that's just that's a very rudimentary process of, I mean, you can train dogs with that. That's not hope.
Yeah,
That's
assuming
just
assuming that hope
positive
is
reinforcement.
assuming that hope it's this intuitive mechanism that you can control, actually, that pushes you to to make some decisions. And again, it's like the stronger it gets, the more probability is there that next time you'll make a mistake, because you just rely on this mechanism and you don't evaluate all these decisions. You ignore negative probabilities and you focus more on positive, because every time before, when you choose positive, you was reinforced by the reality, by the situation. Yeah.
Well, there's also the issue that things are different, right? Like situations are different in life. You know, if you're in a zombie apocalypse, I think it's a good idea to be hopeful, you know, because if you're not hopeful, you're not going to make it, right? I've seen many zombie movies. It's always the case, you know, so I think that's a pretty fair assumption. But that's the zombie apocalypse scenario, right? If you're a poker player, that's not the route you're going to lose money that way. You know, you want to be very cautious.
A cinematic event to prove your point, Bruno.
Yeah, I mean, it's the poker scenario.
A genre that has literally never happened. I don't think qualifies as.
Well, there's such a thing as the power of positive thinking, but I mean.
Okay, I have some experience with that. Like, I have several members.
Zombie apocalypse and poker.
Yeah. Neither.
I'm a very silly person.
False hope. I guess.
False hope. Okay. False hope.
So like, and I guess one of them is personal, because I had a lot of people die when I was in my teens in my family. For some of it was sudden, some of it was weird ass diseases. And I just remember when my uncle died shortly before my 15th birthday. He had this rare, like I think I found an article that was published about his specific case study in a journal, in a scientific journal. And he died from this, something where like 200 people have had it anyway. And I was absolutely naive, because he was at Rochester Mayo, St. Mary's Hospital. So like, by all means. So like, I got a bit cynical. But I've also seen how cynicism can take you too far. And I've also spent years in therapy. And one of the things I learned in DBT, that wisdom is a balance of your reason mind and your emotion mind. So you have to take both things into account. And I feel like that's what good hope is. That's what virtuous hope is when you take the factors into account and are nuanced. I do also have a brother who has a delusional disorder, so I have some experience with that.
You described something fairly similar to a situation that I'm kind of dealing with now. So I also tend to want to plan for both the best case scenario and give the somewhat hopefully lesser probability to the worst case scenario. Expect something in between.
I had another uncle who went to the same hospital, and he had this like tumor behind his eye socket, and everybody was just way too optimistic about it, and I don't know if religion had something to do with that, because they're like super Christian, so they thought, we pray about it and it'll be okay. And I'm like, I'm going to try to be optimistic, but I'm going to go hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, you know? And I feel like that's a balance. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that's precisely right.
It turns out it was cancerous. and they were able to operate and save his eye the first time, and then it came back and they couldn't save his eye, but he is still alive, so that's good.
That is good. Yeah, I feel like I feel like a lot of it is like let's say there's this bad scenario that might happen down the road and we don't know how it's going to play out and there's all these uncertainties. Hope kind of keeps you centered. It's like, well, at least I'm going to eat. At least I'm going to wake up, I'm going to take a shower, I'm going to go through my day, I'm going to get dressed, you know, because you can't be in alert mode every second. Things still have to move on, right? So I think hope sometimes kind of helps you do that. And on a separate topic, does everyone else see Frank as saying Michael Greenberg?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been very confused about that. Yeah.
Is that a bug or did you do that on
Same with
purpose,
you, Frank.
Side.
And Frank, you're sideways.
It's
I don't know.
identity theft. Frank is
And
stealing
you're
your
like-
identity.
It's a very weird thing that Michael show up a second time, but it's a drunk Frank, and he's like
I
upside
don't know
down.
that he's drunk.
I'm sure he's drunk.
He's probably
It's Frank on a
perfectly
Friday
fine.
night. Yes, we do. So
Yeah, I'm not
It's a
drunk.
pretty good assumption, like Craig said.
I'm just normally hanging out
I
in my
hope he's
house
fine.
sideways.
So maybe I'm Frank. Maybe he's Michael and I'm Frank.
I'm used to drunk Frank, though. What I'm not used to is drunk Frank showing up as Michael Greenberg sideways.
Very
Threw you for a loop, didn't I?
you did.
is my
So how did that happen, Frank? Do you know?
Well, I'm sideways because I'm on my iPhone and my phone's sideways. That's how I could prop it up so I could see all of you.
How
And
did you get
then
to?
I'm Michael Greenberg. I don't know how that happened.
Huh, interesting.
Wait, no, I do know. I do know how it happened.
This would be
because
a
I'm on
question
my
for your
phone.
mother, Frank.
No,
think.
I do know what happened because we used Michael's Zoom account for a thingy,
Ah.
and it probably logged me back in as you again.
Uh-huh.
Did it correct it? Am I up right now?
Corrected it.
No, it's okay.
Oh, look at that technology.
Yeah, take another drink, Frank.
It's okay.
No, an ontological question though, Frank, is how do you know you're not Michael Greenberg?
Ooh. Man.
How do I know I am
Probably.
not something?
You gave him something to think about the whole night.
I'm sort of categorization.
Well, hold
there.
on. No, this is actually quite intriguing because I can't prove a negative on that grounds, and I can't provide evidence. All I can say is the lack of evidence.
No,
for
this
showing
is-
that,
this-
that I am
this is
justified
simple.
to say I'm not.
This is simple. Would Michael Greenberg be able to quote Hegel at the drop of a pin? I think not.
Well,
I don't know.
we can also go with
Maybe Michael.
properties, right? We can go with properties. Isn't that a way to distinguish things? Like Michael has hair, a Frank does not.
Yep.
So,
He has a mustache, but no, I know what you mean.
Right.
Frank
Michael
has
has
a
hair,
mustache,
Frank
and Michael
doesn't have
does not.
hair. This person doesn't have hair, therefore it is actually, as this person has hair, we can just infer that it's not Frank, not necessarily that it's Michael, because other people could have hair.
Huh.
So we could do it logically.
I could
Well, let me go back further and talk about how do you know you're just not taking on a Platonic aspect of Michael Greenberg? In other words, you're just approaching the Michael Greenberg.
What, like, is he the ideal Michael?
Oh, I could be
Someone
doing
asked.
that.
I'm just saying there could be an ideal Michael Greenberg, and you're just reflecting an aspect of that.
Reflecting an aspect of a Platonic
That
form.
Platonic
or an
ideal of Michael
ideal.
Greenberg.
And this is bringing me back to WandaVision. There are two visions, but none of the visions are the real vision. So I'm
See, if it is of the ideal, then it is a priori. Ergo, Michael must be able to recognize it as the ideal and strive towards it in the becoming. Ergo, I asked Michael, am I the ideal? Michael?
Yes, you are the ideal.
That's
And I'm the
it.
ideal Frank. Yeah, we're each the ideal of the other.
This is a wonderful strange
Oh
loop.
my.
Let's keep
Yeah.
going.
What do you guys
I
think
need
about-
pork wines.
what do you guys like to just to change the topic? What do you guys think about the idea of progress? Is progress inevitable? Like we can even link it to the idea of hope.
No.
Our idea is, I think, a
Frank
pretty
said
hopeful-
no, so the whole question is shut down.
That's it. We're done. We're finished.
No.
Yeah, Frank is ideal, so.
Well,
we
Frank.
know.
The ideal Michael Greenberg.
Well,
Sorry,
yeah,
I said yeah. Ideal Michael said no, so
ideal Michael said no. Okay. So ideal Michael.
We're done. Good night.
Well, so ideal Michael is not very hopeful. Most people are operate under the hopeful assumption that progress is inevitable, and we're always.
That's nice.
And what-
I think we would need to know what progress is before we go about speaking of its inevitability or not, would we not?
Well, progress of the human race.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Progress,
Well, I
progress assumes that there is some kind of a, I assume, teleological end point that we are trying to get to. And
Well,
I ain't going there.
basic
me and ideal Michael are not going there.
The base assumption is that I guess
Well, the
be
count,
quiet.
it's the count too.
ideal Michael, chill a little bit. So the base assumption is that we're always going to be better off than we were before, essentially, as a species.
Again, better off how? I mean,
Yeah.
Oh God!
basic.
Like-
Question your assumptions or define your terms.
Like politically, economically,
Technologically.
yeah, technologically.
Who's taking the data though? Like who's running the
Setting the
statistics? Are we
metric,
going
that's the one I wanna
quantity
know.
over quality, or are we going?
Steven Pinker.
I knew you'd bring it.
Steven Pinker pointed out that yesterday, the headline in the New York Times could have been 100,000 people made it out of extreme poverty. And that could have been the headline on the front page of the New York Times for the last 25 years, every single day.
Okay.
So I do think things are progressing. Have we done everything we need to do? No, but we are making progress.
But poverty is only one measure. Like I've always wondered this, like poverty, war. So there's certain measures, health, poverty, war. I think we can say we progressed on. But as the human condition, I feel is so much more complex than that. So maybe we're better on the more measurable things, but we're not as good. I'm agnostic. I'm just saying, could it be that on the things that are harder to measure, we're worse on, but the things that are easier to measure?
It's totally possible. It's totally
Okay.
possible.
Give me an example.
That's why the question is interesting. But give us an example, Michael. Yeah.
Something that's hard to measure,
Yeah.
Social cohesion.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I
Okay,
think
are you talking globally or nationally?
Whichever level you want.
I would say
Yes.
still neither. I would say no.
Yeah, no, we're not better off. I would agree. Yeah,
Well, we're not worse off though.
but I think we are worse off. Yeah.
Well,
We're better
except-
off than when. We're worse off than when. You have to
Social
distinguish
cohesion, yeah.
progress, or you have to distinguish points. You can't just say we're better off than when. You have to have some transitivity.
Oh, then we used to
Comparison
be.
is between the past and the present, I guess.
Well, I'll put a
That's
counter.
ambiguous.
I'll put a counter that in some ways we are better social cohesion. I mean, I'm sorry, David, where are you located?
Say it
I'm
again.
in North Carolina.
Okay, so we got several people in Minnesota, somebody in North Carolina, somebody in Russia. I'm at the pub, or I went in from the pub, and somebody on Mars.
You're not.
So clearly we've overcome distance in terms of social cohesion.
That's true. Craig is in
That's
Mars.
just geographic. That's not. What about between us and other people in our area? Yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. That's not what I think about as social cohesion. I was thinking like more like if people gel in society. Is that what you're talking about, Michael?
Yeah, I was actually, see, we're all kind of into philosophy, but I guess it's how well we connect with, I guess, everyone in our community. Like, yeah, not just philosophers, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't think humans have ever connected with everybody in their community.
Not everybody, but there's degrees.
A lot.
Like, I don't know.
A lot more though. A lot more than now.
I don't think we can answer how we progressed with any of these categories, to be perfectly frank. I don't think we're going to get there with any of these because there are other opinions out there. I think this group particularly ends up being a little bit more liberal, but when you talk to, I mean, let's just talk to the Native Americans. Let's ask their opinion. And I don't think they'll agree. So I think we have to think a little bit differently as far as what progress means.
Well, I think you make a good point, but you know, if you're Native American, like from a Native American perspective, there's definitely no progress. You know, like the progress has been certainly not.
I object to that.
What do you mean?
Because I'm part Native American. I'm part Native American, and I don't feel that way.
Thing is freaking out.
Somebody who is Native American with one.
Well, I don't think that means there are no other opinions.
We're hearing.
So my only point was that I think this is a very opinion based.
Let me run a question by y'all quickly, if I may. I'm sorry, David. You were saying something, and I butted in.
Go ahead.
The question I just want to run by everybody is, why do we think this is an important question?
Well, we could say that about every single question, man.
Well, but we can also try to answer it too, can't we?
Yeah, I guess. Like which one? Which one, Craig?
This whole thing about inevitability of progress, does it matter whether progress is inevitable or not? And if so, why does it matter? And if not, why doesn't it matter? Personally, I'm fairly indifferent to it. I think I can definitely see areas where I would say there are what I would define as progress happening, and there are other areas where I would say no. And there are probably areas where I would say I see anti-progress happening. But okay.
We may relate it to the question of hope. So if you have this belief that there's inevitable progress, you'll probably have more hope about the future.
Yeah, I mean that's.
And whatever is going on, maybe your subjective view on like social cohesion, maybe, or any other measure which you pick, maybe like, oh, there's no progress in my subjective view. But as if you believe in inevitable progress, you may have a view that that's okay. No matter what's going on in my life, as a society, we get ahead, and that's what may give you hope, and what may help you to
What
be
about
emotionally balanced? Yeah.
What about progress?
The best of all possible worlds.
What if progress equals less bloodshed per year? What about that?
Well, that would be one metric, right? That would be the metric. I guess Michael even said war, so that would kind of like fall into that category,
I'm not even talking about war, though. I mean, like within the country of the United States, we have a whole bunch of just homicide and school shootings and like one-on-one type things. I don't know if that we include that within warfare.
Well,
as an interpersonal warfare? Are we using war to describe that or not?
Well,
Less
that's
violence.
Certainly not war, but we could have a category that that basically groups all those things, or we can have separate categories. But I mean, that's not war, but you can certainly have a category that included that.
Or what if I said, how many people died of COVID 2 years ago? You would say 0. And then we would say how many people have died of COVID now, and we would say 530,000 in the U.S. Let's just keep it in the U.S. And then the thing is, would you say that's decline or progress? Because it also depends on what we're talking about. Because
That's
a
cherry
higher amount of
picking is
people
what it
died, we
is,
could say
right?
it is.
I was
Well,
just
I'm
trying to
talking
get.
about-
I was just trying to.
I mean,
I
We're
was
talking
trying
about
to
general processes.
to
macro
cultivate some other ideas that could be more universally progress, because I don't think technology is a universally accepted in mark of progress. I don't think that's. I mean, yes, while a lot of people benefit from it, a lot of people like it, I think that's hugely opinion based, and so I don't think. So I think
Well,
we
I
should
don't-
really seriously criticize, like be willing to scrutinize which items we consider progress.
How about science? Like, is there progress in
Yeah.
science for
I
the
think
last?
science is good. I think medicine is pretty universally helpful.
Well, I think Vladimir might be talking even like less subjectively, just good, forget good or bad, does science progress? And I would say yes. Like we
Science-
discover,
Yes,
like
agreed.
I would say yes, but it's not linear.
But it's
Put a
compounding.
Craig on Mars, so yeah.
It does compound.
No, that would be engineering and not necessarily science. But then the question, of course, related to progress is how much does progress cost, right? Because these changes don't come without consequences. And in many cases, specifically talking about technology, the unintended side effects that come with technology. And those aren't necessarily readily A, measurable, and B, obviously immediate, but long-term, for example, things like carbon footprints and things like that, that are results of technology. But at the time those technologies were being developed and deployed, people weren't thinking about things like that. And so is that actually progress, or do you need to measure progress against what it costs to make that so-called progress? I mean,
Well,
I think you probably do, but
well, this brings up a question is and really in any kind of complex system, or extremely complex system, it's inherently chaotic. I mean, at that point, you inherently can't actually measure progress because you can't anticipate all of the unintended consequences or predict all of the effects.
I don't think hard is the same as chaos. I would not agree with that.
Well, we don't, again, like Craig pointed out, I mean, there's plenty of stuff we do that we don't really know what the effects are.
But I don't think the human brain, I mean, if we really want to make the best use of our science and technological process, we could we could actually build a computer to make those calculations for us.
I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords.
yeah, there's a lot of
I see.
argument on that particular subject
Well, that's the safe thing to
about
say
whether we
here,
could or
because
whether
they're
we
probably going to
couldn't.
watch this at some point. So it's a smart thing to say that.
It also depends on the scale how you measure. For example, if you measure like 2,000 years, it's definitely there's
Right.
progress by like almost in everything, right? But if you measure like last 10 years, probably there.
But again, progress related to what? I mean, humans basically we're basically an infestation who's taking over the entire world compared to 2 to 10,000 years ago when it was a little bit more competition.
Life certainly became more comfortable. Like now you must just sit in the, in your room and don't worry about, what you are going to eat tomorrow and about, warm and cold and, all stuff like that.
We're also, I mean, I think something that is interesting about this conversation about progress today is that we're extremely biased, because we're in a very good moment in the history of mankind. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have, but it's also important to understand how fortunate we are right now, because and that, you know, that can produce a very strong bias. Because if we're having this conversation in 1940, I think the conclusions would be significantly different, you know. So
Or if we were just in a different country right now.
yeah, maybe. I mean, well, that depends, right? Because if
There's
you're
still
still
people
looking,
living with dirt floors and no plumbing. I mean, there are a bunch of places in Africa
Yeah.
that you can go.
that's true.
I'd rather be in the 1990s.
I mean,
Okay.
1990s was also a pretty good time for
For
mankind.
America.
Yeah,
For America. I
Like
mean,
in
not
the-
for Japan.
Or-
if you lived in Russia in 1990s, you wouldn't say that.
Oh yeah. I know.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
the
I know about that.
hardest time ever. Like
My
Russia-
privilege is shown right now. I know.
But Russia had it easy in comparison to some other countries in 1990. So, you know, it's all kind of like relative.
Just depends on the country.
Depends
Oh,
on the
the-
country.
I'm just gonna say the 1990s were a very dark time. I mean, it was just nothing but Smash Mouth and just couldn't
Yes,
escape.
Radiohead.
Wait,
Radiohead was a
All Star
beacon.
was 2000, wasn't it?
You just couldn't escape. Hey, now you're an all-star.
Ah, good times.
True.
But I think you're right,
Makes me happy.
Natasha. I think yeah, geographically there's a bias as well. But I think I'm trying to think about it in global terms. But you're right. I mean, there's a little bit of a geographical bias because again, if we're thinking about the 1990s and we're thinking maybe Africa, it doesn't look like a lot of progress, you know. If you think about Rwanda, it really doesn't look like a lot of progress, you know. So, but I mean, I think this conversation needs to be had like on a global perspective, you know. At least I think that's what's.
Well,
And
How about
Natasha,
this?
I'd rather be living in Germany right now.
how about this? All progress is subjective and all progress is relative.
Well, that's certainly the case, but
Frank, why did you bring up Germany?
I don't know, because I'd rather be living there right now.
well, Germany is a great
No,
place.
you'd rather be living there in the 1990s, I'm sure, Frank. And then
Not
you
No,
could listen to
not
Falco.
1990s. No,
I
no,
actually
no,
did
no,
live
listen
in
to-
Germany,
you could
so I'm
play
curious
Falco
why you
all
think
day.
it's better.
Oh, that's nice.
I mean, it was only 6 months, but I mean, I'm just curious why you think it's better. I just want to know.
And
I
why
think
Germany?
it's better.
They have like a huge racist problem against Turks. Did you know that?
Yeah,
Did you
I
live?
got
Okay.
family who's from there. No,
Did
Oh,
I
okay.
never lived there. I got a bunch of family who are from Germany.
I mean, Germany is a great country. I mean, it's not a bad place to go to.
They got good beer.
Great beer.
They sure do.
I'm just saying they have problems,
Everybody has
Mhm.
problems, Natasha.
like
Everybody has
like
problems.
any other country has
Like the
problems.
U.S., we have a huge racist problem against anybody who's not
Everybody has
Pantone 77.
What?
Like the U.S., we have a huge racist problem against anyone who's not Pantone 66. That's white.
Who's Anton?
Ugh.
I know. I was thinking of Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Yeah.
So I mean, we are maybe a little bit biased, but especially on the timeline, because this is a particularly good time for mankind. Because I'm thinking like maybe in 100 years from now, maybe it won't look like such progress, you know, because mostly because of what Craig was talking about, the environment. In fact, I don't think people realize that this is already starting to impact people, you know, like I don't realize that, but people like, for example, in Indonesia, they're starting to have some serious problems in terms of the environment, for example. So people in some places in the world are starting to certainly see the effects of this, but we're all going to see the effects of
You
it.
mean like the Gulf
Actually,
Coast
it
in the
only-
southern United States and places
Yeah,
like
I was
that.
gonna say that.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
actually don't need to go that far. When I drove into Los Angeles, when I moved out there, just driving into the city with the windows down, my eyes started to tear up just because of how bad the fucking smog was. Like,
I will say, I do think measurable progress, probably still subjective, but humanly accepted progress is always going to have a cost. It's always going to cost something that was valuable at the time. It's going to either cost the investment in things that were valuable financially or time, or it's always going to cost.
And
to make,
how is it that you know this?
I said, I think, from a personal level, just based on the things that I have analyzed with my life, but also through, I mean, I think I would say medicine is something that is very important to achieve progress in. And oh, sorry.
Let me rephrase my question.
Oh, okay.
What evidence brings you to this conclusion?
In order to, I'm logically, in order to research and make discoveries in medicine, you have to expend something, right? It's basically in order to gain some, it's the theory of matter, basically, is that in order to make something, you have to lose something. That's what I'm using based on it, is that in order to.
Do you have an example?
So doctors who went to Africa in order to, when they were trying to solve malaria, you lost doctors to the actual disease before they were able to gather enough of the information on the disease in order to provide other doctors, subsequent doctors, the information necessary to find a cure. The cost is good doctors at the time. The cost is the time it took to actually find the cure. And the cost is perhaps whatever went into generating the materials to get the cure through a bunch of failed attempts. But finally you got a cure. That's what I'm saying, is that there's always going to be a cost, and it's going to be time, it's going to be resources, and sometimes it's going to be, the cost is going to carry on into the future. In most cases, the cost is going to carry on in the future. Even if it's financial, the debt from cost will carry on in the future, but it can also be environmental, will carry on into the future.
Now, my understanding is there's not a cure for malaria yet, but that's beside the point. We do know how to treat it better, from my understanding. And are the number of lives saved greater than the number of lives spent to find the cure, to find the treatment?
Well, those two aren't really necessarily connected. Like, if you don't try to find a cure, you can't save any lives.
That's my point.
Yeah. So there's always going to be something that you have to, I think, yeah, that's the point that Dave is making.
But if you invest.
But when you're talking about progress, you have to understand that, yeah, it's not, I mean, you're trading something, but the point is, are you gaining more than what you're losing, which is what he's asking, right? So, I mean, in terms of medicine, I don't think we can't really make the argument that there hasn't been progress. And
the reason I was bringing this up was the environmental cost that we're experiencing now.
Yeah, that's a different.
I don't know that it was predictable. Maybe it was. Most people didn't know that would be the cost. And sometimes that's how it goes, is that progress is always going to have a cost. And it doesn't really help if you find out after the fact that the cost was higher than you expected. I don't think, I mostly was talking to Craig's point, where you have to measure progress and include the cost. And I don't think you have to. I think there's always going to be a cost, and you can't always predict the cost, but that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have progress. That's all of this was for that.
let me put a corollary to my question then. And my corollary is Bruno said something to the effect of you have to measure what you gain versus what you cost. And my question is, who's the you in that equation? That is, are the people who get the gain the same people who also paid the cost? Or are there in fact two different groups, people who get gains and people who pay costs? And how is that equitably dealt with? Or is that simply to be ignored because some people get gains?
Touche.
Yeah, and what's interesting is like we see this with automation, right? Automation is the prime example of this, where let's say someone invents something, it automates something that people did manually. So those people that were doing it manually often lose their job, and then they might go into a different industry, right? But basically, it makes life easier for everyone. In theory, those people would move into another industry, but I wonder if often the new industry that they move in, they might have preferred the old work. So like, as we automate more things, the nature of our work keeps changing. And I wonder, is the nature of our work going in the direction that we like, or did we like kind of being farmers or whatever? Well, being farmers was often very, very rough, but I guess we don't know necessarily that the new jobs we're moving into, we prefer over the older ones. So yeah, that's just something I think of. I think usually we do, but not always.
No,
Well, there's a big issue regarding politics, regarding the loss of, quote, Democrats talk about the loss of blue collar voters, is that Democrats have pushed the idea of retraining a lot, whereas there's a lot of older voters tend to just not want to be retrained, because if you're an older person, again, no offense, David and Craig, is why would you want to learn to program when you've been doing something else?
And Shashir, just to be clear, is it my blonde hair that makes you think I'm older?
And
that's true. Sorry, I meant
old is very relative. I used to teach in high schools. I'm an old guy, man. I mean, in high school. So look, we're all old here. I think
we're all old. I remember the '90s. So yeah.
I mean, I've been called old to my face. So
today is not the first time that humanity has faced challenges from improvements in technology. Michael, you brought up farming, and in 1900, so 121 years ago, 70% of the people on Earth worked in farming, mostly for themselves. Even in the United States, most farmers did not have steam engines. They did not have any kind of automation at all. Today, 2% of the population of Earth works in agriculture. 2%. So we have been through a transition that cost us a lot of jobs. And I do not know anybody that would go back to 1900.
But they haven't lived long enough to know what it was like then. So I guess like maybe a lot of people were happier. Or what about like the Amish, for example? Yeah.
What you say is correct. No one has lived that long, but thanks to the written language and video and film and all of that and spoken word, we have an understanding of what it was like. Imperfect, yes, but we do know it was much more challenging to live in 1900 than it is in 2021, in my opinion. You guys may differ.
The farm equipment itself was hazardous, seriously hazardous. Like my mom's side of the family was, they were farmers. That's what they did. Corn and animals and all that kind of stuff. and
Yeah.
they definitely embraced technological advances. And my
Yeah.
grandma lived to like 90 years old. Like, they wouldn't embrace it if it didn't like work better and ensure longer longevity and safety and like the potential to not lose fingers and arms and and get infected with, you know, feces and all that kind of shit like that.
But maybe
It
we
is
could
that
be
kind of
modern
shit.
farmers. Like what if we could be modern farmers, right? Like do we have to be modern? Like what if 70% of people today were farmers, but they use more modern equipment? Yeah.
There would
I
be
think
too
we need
much
to be
food.
postmodern farmers.
Yeah, I know some farmers, and they're very happy. So technology. I think I don't know if that's the point that Michael is trying to make. I think it is, but it's we can't really like. We have to understand that if the technology has improved and has brought us some benefits, I mean, yes, that's probably the case, but that doesn't mean that everything has improved with it. You know, right? So you know, we got to make the distinction. Like,
But I guess my point was the technology changes our jobs, right?
Mhm.
So 70% of people used to be farmers. Now 2% of people are farmers, right? So the nature of our work changed. So maybe our work now is less hazardous than being a farmer.
even
right?
if
Yeah,
you're
it,
a
ma-
farmer,
it,
even
it
if you're a
makes
farmer
life
now.
it makes life easier, but the question is easier life better?
Exactly. That's actually what I was thinking. That's actually what I
Safe.
was thinking.
Okay, we're talking about safety, getting out without huge
Right.
disfigurement. Like that's not just easy. Okay, that's having a life where you can still work with all of your limbs.
Yeah, okay, but there is a difference between being safe and being comfortable. There's a difference between being safe and comfortable and being like fulfilled, you know?
Like a typewriter versus a computer.
No, as a person, you know, like there's a very big difference between just like you can these days, you know, in some countries, in most Western countries, you can go through life and be somewhat comfortable, you know, with relative ease. That doesn't mean you can live a good life. You know, those are like pretty different things. So we also have to make that distinction, you know. Are we talking about just being more comfortable? Yeah, I mean, for sure. Unless you're in a bad country these days. I mean, but in most countries you're gonna live a more comfortable life. But that doesn't mean you're gonna live a more fulfilled life. Like Harari, for example. I'm a big Harari fan. You guys should read Harari if you haven't yet, because he's like really brilliant. But he writes about hunter-gatherers and how their lives compare to ours. And I'm not really sure, and I'm not even sure that's the point he's making, but just from the point of like self-fulfillment, there's a good chance that we weren't made for the life that we're leading now. Like we were made for a much more simple life in much smaller community. I think that people, like, how many people have depression these days? You know, like we live very comfortable lives. Are people happy? You know, I'm not really so sure that a lot of people today are happy with the life that they're leading.
Yeah, it's like you have everything you need, but still life makes very little sense because you can't kind of exercise your power, exercise your, you know, your ability. I just want to tell like small story related to this question. I used to practice lucid dreams, and I did it for many years. And once there was a moment when I kind of found myself in a dream, awake, being aware that this was a dream, but like in this state, in the dream state. And usually it's like flying or doing all sorts of, you know, some crazy things. But usually it's just it lasts for maybe for 1 minute, maybe for 2 minutes. It's very hard to prolong it further. But this time it was kind of half an hour. So in a lucid dream, I'm in a dream. I'm aware that this is a dream and that I'm lying in my bed in the room, but I can do whatever I like. And for half an hour, and again, it's like a relative time. I don't know exactly how much, but it seemed as if there were half an hour. For half an hour, I did basically everything I could do. And I was so bored. And in the end, I was, wow, it's like, what can it's like I am kind of I have infinite power. I may do whatever I like. I may just, transform reality in a way like in this movie Inception. And there was nothing to do. It's like if you have infinite power, if you have no obstacles, there's nothing really that makes sense. And well, the same with human progress. So we are getting to the point where everything is available. You can do whatever you like. You may have all sorts of positive emotions from life, but you don't do anything. You don't have this struggle. You don't overcome anything, and it seems to be even worse than when you live in a cave, or you have to hunt for hunt animals to live.
I think Frank's
I'm
been holding his hand.
I'm not saying I know that is the answer, because I'm actually very skeptical that that's the truth. But I'm saying, prove. I'm playing devil's advocate. Prove prove it. Yeah.
Frank had his hand up for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, let's let
Okay, maybe 2, but it was a while.
let's let
Okay.
Frank talk before he explodes.
Okay, thank you. Just really quickly, I wanted to say this is taken back a bit. Really quick, when we started talking about progress, or that, of course, we progressed or anything, and David, not to knock you or anything, because if you brought up the steam engine or anything from the Industrial Revolution, I would say, yeah, of course we progressed in that area. That's a clear-cut example. But the thing I always called to was, to contextualize what you're talking about when we're talking about progress. Give me some area so I can say, yep, that's rigorous. There's evidence that correlates to it. And the other thing was, what Craig pointed out earlier was, I don't want to give any grounds for like inherent teleology, like to say, well, of course we're progressing. We just always progress. It's like, no, there is absolutely opportunities to go backwards or to make fuck ups and, sink the ship in certain areas. That absolutely happens. We fail all the time as human species. And I just don't want us to regress into Leibniz optimism or, a manifest truth kind of problem. And
I'm not even remotely suggesting that.
okay, that was the whole reason that I did the when that began, because it was
and I'm curious. I don't understand how you interpreted that from what I said.
Oh, mainly because when you brought up what was it? Was it Pinker? Who was it? Or somebody?
Steven Pinker.
Yeah, it was Pinker. That every day there's 100,000 people who are saved or climbed out of poverty, is what you said. And the thing is, I look at that and I go, if I can be given evidence or something like that, I would say, yeah, this is really, and I know for a large part, our globalized economic system has allowed people to perpetually, yes, climb out of poverty. And that is substantiated in some claims. The thing, though, that I just don't want that to come out is someone go like, see, there's progress here, so disregard all this other failure stuff, or contextualize it to one area and then goes.
I'm not even remotely suggesting that.
Okay.
And I don't know what I said that gave you that impression.
It's not you, David. It's I deal with people who take.
I don't know whose mind you're reading, but it's not mine.
Okay, that's all I wanted to do. And then
Frank's reading his own mind.
Vladimir, on the grounds that I've heard where you said at the very end, you're like, people don't have the struggles or the overcoming or the problems today.
Well, they have. They have, but that's what we're approaching towards. Like,
okay. Well, the thing is, with all the conveniences, that does exist, but you still have people like me. I'm a competitive lifter in my off time right now. And the thing is, I just rack pulled 600 pounds. Are you telling me that's not an overcoming? Or, I can deadlift 500 pounds. You think that's not overcoming? People still struggle their asses off. They want to go towards something. We got Michael beneath me doing the mathematics in his free time and struggling. We got Craig over here, in his free time doing his, his damnedest to metaphysics to science. And I don't know how he's going to do it. And Natasha singing in her free time. People struggle and find ways to do things.
I don't know, Frank. That sounds like overcompensation to me.
So,
Well, fuck you. Anywho.
so
I don't know. It
if I
sounds like
may
you have
interject
some
for just another
inefficient-
moment. We've actually been discussing two different questions here. I think we've been discussing the question of
Possibly.
has there been progress versus the original question, is progress inevitable? And I think those are two different questions.
Yes.
And one of them involves looking at the past and the other one involves making predictions about the future. And generally, that's what we do, right? Is we look at the past and we extrapolate to make our projections about the future. But occasionally we get those little black swan kind of things that come and bite us in the nose, and things don't go the way that we expect. And really the question for me is some kind of a black swan event that's going to really disrupt our idea of what we think we've done to make progress, is that inevitable?
Well, I think
that would be my reframing of the question.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Craig. And I think that we're in the 21st century now. But if we look at the 19th century, it would seem that mankind was always making progress, right? But then, we hit, World War I, and things kind of like change a little bit. And then we hit World War II, things also changed. Then you had communism, fascism, the Holocaust. And things were really rocky for a while. In the 50s, people were scared of nuclear war. It was really only in the 60s that things started to look better.
I remember Duck and Cover from the 60s.
Vietnam, there was
this idea of progress. It's a relatively new one. For example, for many historical period, people were thinking about golden age, and there was no idea of progress. Like in some cultures, there was we are progressing towards some.
Natasha laughed. Okay, I'll show you. Sorry, Vladimir, go ahead.
So it's a relatively new idea that there is an inevitable progress and that we get better. And probably it was because of science and this industrial technological improvement. But what if there's no progress? What if we just going in cycles? Or what if we are regressing from something else with having progress in one area and going downwards in another area?
Well, the dynamics have changed, but I think what you're saying kind of like aligns with what Craig was saying, and the point that I was basically reiterating from Craig. And I think that the one of the big reasons why the dynamics have changed and why we would be discussing today, you're absolutely right. Historically, people talked about golden ages rather than progress because things were more cyclical than an upward trajectory. But that's not really the case anymore if you look at history, right?
Well, here's one thing I'll throw out there is that if you notice in most historical golden ages in almost any culture, golden age is sometime in the past.
Well, but before it was true that there was a cyclical nature to these things, like Islam, for example. If you look at that's just one example. There are many examples. But Islam, there was a golden age, and then they declined. And you could say the same thing about the Portuguese Empire, the Spanish Empire, the French Empire. Many different ancient Rome, ancient Greece, Persian Empire. I mean, there was certainly like some sort of cyclical thing going on, and but that change. I think technology is a big reason why that changed, because there is an upward trajectory of technology that simply, look at European history for 1,000 years. Things were worse than it was in the time of the Romans at the peak of Roman civilization. They were better off than Europeans for 1,000 years afterwards. So
I think that one of the ways that humanity makes progress is to have conversations like this one, where we identify the problems and try to understand them, and because when you guys leave here, you talk to other people during the week, and
Not so much anymore.
well, not lately.
Not lately.
But I
Before, yes. it used to be.
I am overwhelmingly positive about humanity. Yes, we have challenges. The climate is, we have to examine that very closely. We have to understand what impact we have on it and make changes. It's not that we don't have challenges. It's not that everything's perfect. But what I'm trying to convey is that one of the reasons that I think that humanity has made progress is because we discuss things like this and we try to find solutions. And I know that no one in this meeting here is making policy, but you have discussions with other people. And if the assessment of this conversation is in your quiver, then that's going to make a difference, in my opinion.
Well, if I can tie this back to what I bring up about the fall of civilizations, is that a lot of times if you do a post-mortem on civilizations, you can start seeing where they're actually starting collapse at what, for someone living at the time, they would actually consider the height of the civilization.
Well, I kind of
That's
wonder,
natural, right? Because if you're at the very top, you can't stay at the top usually for very long. It's like an athlete.
Well, there's
let's
this
use
concept
an
of-
example. Let's start with Rome. What would people consider the height of Rome?
Probably
Well,
like
if you look at the
Marcus
greatest height
Aurelius.
of the extent of Rome, and trying to think which,
Well, Marcus Aurelius would
under
be.
really,
Rome had such a long peak.
Marcus Aurelius technically never actually expanded the empire. It was actually, what was it, Trajan before him? who did the
Trajan
last-
was
yeah, it might have been.
the last,
last
conqueror.
expansion.
But,
or
but Marcus
Hadrian.
Aurelius was I mean, the empire was very healthy in some ways, So and before and after that, that's kind of like when things started going badly. That's why you could consider him the apex. But yeah, you could also say Trajan. Like you could say probably like 5 or 6 names because they had such a long list of great.
I'm pretty sure it's when that wolf mama was suckling Romulus and Remus that was the
genocide.
high point of Rome.
Why? Just because that's a little bit pervy, Craig.
Because it was leading to the Roman Republic, and the Roman Republic was a good thing. The Roman Empire, while it conquered a lot of territory militaristically, and maybe built a lot of aqueducts, there were a lot of problems with the Roman Empire versus the Roman Republic. So I admire the Republic. I do not necessarily admire the Empire.
Well, this again comes down to how do you define progress? Because clearly the Roman Empire was, again, materially so much larger, wealthier than the Roman Republic ever was.
So
Part of
yeah,
the
if
drive to
economics is your criterion, then yeah, but maybe economics isn't the only, or certainly perhaps not the best way to measure things.
But all of the people that the Romans defeated,
Mhm.
we don't hear about in the history books.
Oh, we hear about them.
Well, some of them we do. I mean,
We
the
hear
Greeks
about
were
'em.
into-
Yeah,
I mean,
those
every
Germans and those
conquest
Gauls.
of
We-
Julius
Now,
Caesar,
let
we
me
actually hear
rephrase
about-
that. We don't hear from them.
I'm pretty
We
sure I
may
hear from
know
my
of them, but we
ancestors.
don't hear.
Yeah,
we don't
again, I
hear
think
their
the
side of
British.
story.
I think the British would probably take issue with that,
Yeah.
as would the
British,
French,
and
as would the
Germanic,
Germans.
and yeah.
I think the
Same
Carthaginians
thing.
would definitely have a different opinion.
Same thing.
But going back to the point was like, how do we know that someone's at the height of the civilization? Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. But like I said, I think Yeah, when you're at the height, there's always the possibility that, that's not going to last forever. I mean, the Rome certainly didn't last forever, but it was a pretty long period of time. When you look at the Spanish Empire, it was a smaller period of time. When you look at the Mongols, it was a very, very, very small period of time. So,
I would almost elevate that from not going to last forever to almost a law of nature saying, yes, you will fall eventually. If I was to attach inevitability to a word, that one maybe would be the thing that I would say is inevitable, is
that's
that
inevitable.
high powers will fall.
I mean,
Right, but this is the point, is
you
you're
may-
not gonna,
You may be
You're-
right, Craig. Sorry, go ahead.
it is, a lot of times, if you're at the height of your civilization, you're not gonna know that you've passed the peak. It's one of these things you can only tell in hindsight.
well, you think the United States has passed the peak, right? It comes down to that, but
There are certainly warning signs.
I'm not so sure I agree with that. I don't think the United States has passed the peak necessarily. I think it might have not, I mean,
I'm fine saying I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean,
Yeah, we're not gonna know until we actually see it. That's
My clairvoyantron is broken.
yeah, my clairvoyantron is also broken.
Insufficient data.
Insufficient data there, but I mean, it is true.
Observed sample is not complete.
What is more important? Is it the GDP or the GDP? So is it the nominal GDP more relevant, or the GDP PPP? Like I don't even know the GDP.
talking about per capita.
No, it's not the per capita. It's the
Purchasing power parity.
purchasing. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I guess Bruno's saying in some countries, the cost of living is higher. So you have to maybe do an adjustment for that. But okay, I mean, it's close.
Which one is the most important one?
PPP per capita, I would say, is really probably the most precise.
Okay, so in that, according to that metric, actually China has surpassed the United States actually significantly as the largest economy in the world. In the GDP nominal, the United States is still the biggest. So that has changed something that was the case for, I think, about 60 years, that the US is the biggest economy in the world. So yeah, I mean,
Sure, it's not the other way around.
Oh,
GDP PPP. So the say it again, Michael. I forgot the.
No, I don't think China's higher. PPP. I'll post a link in the chat.
It's higher. I'm pretty sure it's higher.
But I just posted a link on Wikipedia, PPP per capita. So what that does is
China's number one in the world right now in that one. It's bigger than the U.S. economy.
not
Yeah,
not
I'm not sure
according.
about that.
That website doesn't say that. The Wikipedia article
Look at
says
2020, because I looked that up pretty recently.
it is 2020. International Monetary Fund.
I think you have them reversed, Bruno.
Really? Let me see.
The
No, he's
problem with
talking-
China is their population.
Luxembourg. There we go.
Small countries, small
not
wealthy
looking at per
countries will
capita,
always be
are you?
higher in that regard. Singapore is like far higher than the U.S. and China, because China's got so many people. So once you start breaking it down by
Well, let
any
me-
sort of per capita measure,
I'm gonna post the Wikipedia here. China is definitely ahead, according to Wikipedia. Because you posted per capita, Michael. That's a different thing.
Per capita means per person.
Yeah, I was talking about the GDP PPP. So
Or it is the GDP PPP or the purchasing power parity per capita.
so the PPP is it's the size of the economy. It's not per person. It's the size of the economy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But
That's weird.
It's measured taking into consideration how much things cost still. So that's why I was asking. I'm not an economist. I have only.
No, the article you gave is not per person. It's for
It's
the
not per
whole-
person. No, it's not per person. It's the size of the economy. It's the size. I
Yeah.
mean, per person, China, still pretty down.
Yeah. Okay. So then we're right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we're on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. So depending on how you look at it, China is now the biggest economy in the world. So I mean, that's not so relevant. I think it's inevitable.
yeah, it's the biggest market. That's sure.
Yeah, and also it has 1 billion people. But it's just to say that, yeah, and that doesn't mean that the US is not the foremost power in the world. I think it is, but it's, you know, depending on how you look at it, it's not the biggest economy anymore. But I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's not really that relevant. You know, you're gonna have powers that rise and that fall. You know, that's just the cycle of life, the cycle of civilization. I think the most important thing is human civilization. You know, like what, because especially because the world is more globalized than ever, it's going to continue to get more globalized than ever. So I think that's really what matters the most.
Right, but this gets again to the question of the fall of civilization. Could human civilization, I mean, yes, if the US collapses as a civilization, given the size of it, it'll take down pretty much the rest of the world.
I don't think why would the US collapse necessarily? Like, I don't think that's something that we'll see like anytime soon, you know. There's not really a reason why. Like, I think maybe like long term, like stuff like the environment, you know, I think that is a real danger, you know, like if we cannot get that under control, then the whole idea of progress might, you know, just blow up in our faces, right? Because we'll feel very stupid if you have a nuclear war and if the ocean starts swallowing up our cities. I mean, we'll feel very stupid, and it won't look like much of progress.
Well, we're technically a lot. I mean, yes, there's environmental collapse that could happen. I mean, again, who would think that Texas power grid would go down for a week? I mean, there's also, if you look at that, there's political instability. I mean, again, the election, if it was closer, it very easily could have been overturned. It actually wouldn't have been that difficult. So that probably would have led to a lot of instability. There's a lot of factors that could work, and given just how interconnected our systems are, you couldn't have a major failure in one factor, you know, be it something in our infrastructure, something in our political systems that just translates throughout. I mean, the fact that we've performed the worst out of industrialized country in the world in dealing with COVID is definitely a huge warning sign that if we have a pandemic that's potentially more lethal than COVID, how do we handle that?
You may be right, Shashir, that we've performed horribly, but I'm trying to, and that seems to be the sentiment that I'm hearing, but I'm trying to figure out how it is that we lead the world in the number of vaccinations, not only per capita, but tremendously. And yet we're not doing great.
No, we're not. We should have never gotten to this amount of death. I mean, it's great that we're leading the world in the number of vaccinations. That's certainly an achievement. That said, we can't ignore that 530,000 people died.
My grandma was one of them, and she died because her nursing home got
yeah. I'm sorry about
pest control infested. They had a thing, and it started with some of the people who worked there, and of course they put them on leave right away. But
I understand that. I'm just wondering if the state of health in the United States is a contributor to our the number of deaths.
Well, you also have to take into account that, you know, Donald Trump handled the crisis like terribly. I mean,
yeah, I'm not talking about Donald Trump.
No, I know, but now the administration is a different one, and the attitude towards the vaccination.
Also, the U.S.
Okay.
Vaccinations.
I don't like Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump is a terrible person. I think if you spent an afternoon with Donald Trump, you would be disgusted. However, even before Trump left office, we led the world in vaccinations.
We're not leading in vaccinations. Israel is, then the United Arab Emirates. What is it?
Well, I could be wrong if
And program,
I've seen
and then the United Kingdom.
a video of the progress of vaccinations worldwide, and the United States is clearly at the top. So
Okay.
maybe somebody was fabricating data. I'll post a link in the website and on the
No, but-
Facebook thing.
But things were not going so well. But now they seem to be going a lot better. I mean, but that's a good.
No question. Things were not going well. I'm just saying they were not going as bad as we were being told.
I mean, that's a matter of. I mean,
Yeah, there's a lot of dead people who would probably object to that statement if they could.
Agreed.
But
I
here,
totally agree.
Come on,
A
we're
lot
not
of dead people would object to that statement. However, can that be attributed solely to how we've handled it and not have any regard for the state of health in the United States?
so here's let me run this by you, David.
What
I think this whole thing is related to the other great systemic problem that the United States is facing, and that is our entire infrastructure for damn near everything. And that's actually where I point the finger to this. And this isn't a problem that happened in the last 4 years, right? This has been brewing for 40 years or more.
That is a problem. However, when you look at the impact of obesity and diabetes and pre-existing conditions on susceptibility to COVID illness, hospitalization, and death, if the obesity rate in the United States is 42%, and the obesity rate in China is 6%. We know that people who suffer from obesity are more likely, not always, but more likely,
higher
to
morbidity,
be hospitalized and to die.
So what do you think you would attribute that to? Because is it possible that could be attributed to a side effect of other economic progress in the United States that's also led to that health crisis?
It could be.
Maybe it is. So again,
Could be.
there's another cost that we're looking at.
That's true.
and that's another thing.
That is true.
That's another aspect of like what kind of like what I was talking about before about the idea of progress. That progress, I think that right now in 2020 we have good reason to believe that we've made like substantial progress, and progress is just the general trajectory of our species. But with that being said, the two problems with or exceptions to that general rule is that, number one, things might change. Things might change with a big disaster like environmental disaster. We're not done with that yet. You know, we don't know the implications of this change yet, and it may be that this is going to blow up in our face. Also, atomic war is a possibility, and that would reverse things. So there are certainly challenges that we might have to face that undo everything in the 21st century, 22nd, 23rd, and we just don't know yet. But generally, there is progress. But even more relevant for us today, right now, is the fact that there is progress for the species, but perhaps not so much for the individual. You know, like the life of the average American, for example, but the life of the average person really on planet Earth in 2020 or 21 now I'm like, it's like, for example, the American diet, the modern American diet is not great. You know, when you compare that diet to the hunter-gatherer diet, you know, like people shouldn't be dying of diabetes left and right. You know, they shouldn't have all these heart problems. We have a terrible diet. And then people don't walk, you know, people drive everywhere, you know, they do no exercise. We're doing stuff that our bodies are not designed to do. We're living in a way that we're not designed to live, and we do no exercise. So also we don't get the hormones in our mind that we need to think straight, to have the right emotions. I mean, now with the pandemic more than ever, but we live very sedentary lives, you know, and that's, I think it's not good for us as individuals. Not to speak of all the, I agree with Vladimir, you know, we lack challenges, you know. I feel like there's a big difference, you know, like when you go outside and you work the land, or, you know, you spend some time outside, I feel like the mind processes things in a very different way, and you're a lot more grounded. You live the present. When you're in just like in a city, in an apartment the whole time, and you spend 8 hours in front of a computer, that's just not conducive, I think, to a positive human experience. I think there's a difference between the progress of the species and the progress of the human experience.
And that's why I wonder, so what do you guys think about this? What if we lived as like sophisticated farmers? So farmers where, you know, we're conscious of our health, you know, we still have modern doctors, right? Like we still have, like what if we were like more sophisticated farmers that lived longer because we had healthier habits and stuff like that? What do you guys think of that?
I think that's a great idea, man. Look at the fact that Americans right now, it's a crazy statistic when you think about the fact that the life expectancy in the United States is declining in 2021, and this is before COVID. Like, that's because of the diet, that's because of the lifestyle, that's because, you know, like how depressed people are, like the way the mind works in this society, because obviously medicine has improved dramatically. So I think that's the way, Michael. I don't know if it's sophisticated farmers, but we need to figure out a way to live modern life in a more satisfying and healthier way as well.
Well,
That's true for every.
there's a theory that basically because a lot of our problems, like dealing with obesity and things like that, are actually a function of our evolution, and a function that our bodies are designed to store fat, and we're programmed to seek fat
And
sugar. And so there is, right, that basically the problem is that materially we've advanced faster than really what our biological systems can handle. So you could say the culture has advanced, but not biology.
Humanity is in no danger of running out of challenges. We have plenty of challenges, and we're isolated on this tiny little speck of dust. The whole planet is just a speck of dust. We're in no danger of running out of challenges, but part of the way that we deal with the challenges is having discussions like this. In other words, I'm interested in understanding our problems, not succumbing to them.
But some people, but you could argue the counter, which is that some people, some of the I don't know, politicians or big business interests, they're having discussions too about what will try to benefit them, which may not benefit everybody else. So it's kind of like our discussion versus their discussion, right?
And how do we influence them?
We
Right.
make the demand. Well, you influence that by making the social demand. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but after all of the protests, a lot of companies are posting. Last month, we're posting things pro-Black business and pro-Black women business. it's becoming more and more socially acceptable to be LGBTQ or a person of color. And if we can, like, whether or not these businesses are pandering because it'll help them,
Very
or
likely.
they care, it pushes a positive message. I guess I don't know what y'all mean by progress, but I consider progress where, actually all lives matter.
How about the idea of progress on a philosophical scale? Like, does reality progress somewhere? And what all this whole thing about, like the whole world? Is it just change, random change in matter? And I don't know how to describe it better, but or it's just we have some goal which we are striving for, and if we have, like, what's the goal and what's the purpose?
You mean
Like, not for us as humans, not for us as civilization, but for us as the whole world, as for us as life itself.
So what should be our goal? Is that what you're asking?
No. It's like does life have progress, like the whole life, not just the society or an individual,
Like non-human life as well, or
no,
just
well, if it's possible. I'm not
don't
sure
think-
about what you
I
mean
don't
by
think the whole
non-human life.
progresses. I think if we're looking at life in general, I think it regresses because we kill it. Humans are like we're like a virus, like they say in that Matrix movie.
Well, biologically, and looking at it as kind of an evolutionary thing, what life does is it goes from the simpler to the more complex,
Mhm.
right? That's what the patterns of evolution tell us. Now, is going from the simpler to the more complex biologically, is that progress? Beats the shit out of me. It's evolution, but I don't know if I'd call it progress.
Well, under the laws of thermodynamics, progress is possible. In fact, it's the opposite. I mean, that was the last question, is there a way to reverse entropy?
But it's so hard to talk about life in general. I really do think if we're talking about planet Earth, I mean, it's not doing well. It's a very sick planet right now, and that's because of us. So I fail to see how that's progress. But I mean, if we're talking about millions of years, maybe.
On a cosmic level, like David said about, like, we are just a peck of dust, and like the whole universe, what's going on here? Like, do we have real progress, or is just
At the end of the day, we're pretty insignificant. I mean, who cares? Like, if we look at it from the perspective of the universe, does the universe really care what happens to planet Earth? It's one planet out of a trillion.
The last time I checked, we're part of that universe. So yeah, I think I care because I'm part of that universe.
I'm nothing, like as an individual, I'm
no. But where is this universe? Like, if you're saying, like, I'm nothing, but the universe, like, it seems that your subjective experience of the universe is the only thing you have, and like,
yeah,
you may say you are in the universe, but in the same way, the universe, like, it's all in your consciousness, in your mind.
Yeah, my universe. For my universe, I care very much.
Yeah.
Frankly, if we could talk about Leibniz's ideal, best of all possible worlds.
Yeah. Have you read Candide and Optimism by Voltaire? Sure. Have you read Candide?
No. Sorry?
Have you read Candide? It's like Voltaire's critique of Leibniz. This Leibniz
Pangloss.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I've not read Candide, so.
That's an amazing. That's an amazing book. I mean, like, when I was reading it, it was so fascinating. Like, in terms of this critique of the best possible world, there was his teacher Pangloss, and Candide actually, like, he had troubles, like huge troubles all the time, and he always, like, was optimistic and saying, "Oh, that's all. It's not a problem. I don't care. I may just endure it and go further." And like Pangloss, it was kind of Voltaire tried to mock Leibniz by this character, Pangloss, and it was a teacher of Candide. And Candide always referred to Pangloss, saying that Pangloss couldn't make a mistake. We live in the best world. Like whatever happens, it's for the best. And every time he stumbled upon like more terrible and more terrible situation. Yeah, it was funny book, by the way.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah, it's definitely.
I actually had this idea in mind to suggest some kind of meetings, like new meetings once a month, or maybe even once or 2 months, to take some books, philosophical books, just to read it and probably discuss just one book for a couple of hours.
Yeah, we used to do that actually. We did that for maybe 3 or 4 books. It's a good idea. Yeah. We'll talk about it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it's we kind of stopped doing that, but it was good because that was a good incentive to actually read the books. So
hey, it's like you when you read alone, it's not as good when few people read, and then you may discuss it and get through the book with just to understand it better. And I suggest basically philosophical books.
Yeah.
Some
not Harry Potter.
Yeah. Some.
So I just got to say, hey, Sashir, you're really rocking the Toshiro Mifune there.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been working on that. That's been getting.
Where? Oh,
I've got a few different looks. Yeah, I've got 70s rock star too. My friend Jeff is jealous of my hair. Yeah.
I've just got violet hair.
Sorry, I was distracted because we were talking about giving my cat the Heimlich maneuver. I think she might be coughing a hairball.
And I'm scared. No,
Yeah. All right. Let's head into maybe the final thoughts of the night. And for Vladimir, the middle of the morning, or the middle of the night, actually. Yeah.
It's almost morning. In half an hour. Yeah, in half an hour it's gonna be like sunrise.
What
That's hardcore.
thoughts?
Final
Sure.
thoughts. I'm actually
Listening to me.
my final thought is that like as maybe the height of human intelligence was people like Voltaire, Vladimir. That was as an individual, I think the Enlightenment was probably as high as we have achieved as an environment for the individual to fly intellectually, to evolve as a person. I'm not sure like we can get there. I mean, individually we can get there for sure. There are brilliant individuals, but
on the like whole scale of society.
Yeah, like society as a whole, in terms of intellectuals, like an environment for thinking. I think it's hard now. I think the one thing that we have good now is like our ability to connect right now, like what we're doing right now. Connect like people from different places, different countries, and talk and listen to people connecting, when you watch YouTube and all that. But it's challenging. The 21st century is challenging with so much distraction, media, now social media. There's a lot of things that make people really dumb right now. So it's really difficult for people to think in elevated ways, like in the Enlightenment, for example. That's my take. I'm done for the night. Now I'll just listen to you guys for a while.
I like it. I agree with what Bruno said, and also, I think we could put more thought into how we use technology versus more technology. Like, what if a lot of the effort we put into making newer technology, we put it into thinking about how we're using that technology, and I know that's like more of a subjective thing, rather. But yeah, so I think we could benefit from that.
I agree 100%.
I think there's a field of engineering about that right now, but I'm blanking on the name. I don't know if Craig, if you remember.
Well, I mean, I'm involved with like AI ethics governance and things like that, but I don't think that's what you're driving at though, is it?
No, I've heard about this, about any new technology. There is kind of a field of looking at what are the potential effects of that. And right now, I can't remember the name of.
No, but
Yeah, if you can think of it, yeah, just post it on the Facebook chat or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Michael, it's like in terms of like our ability to create technology and develop science is like at Einstein level, you know, as a species right now. We're like Einstein level, but our ability to actually use those things is more like the chimpanzee, you know.
Yeah.
So there's a huge disparity.
Well, because it's a harder question to figure out how the technology is going to impact the society than it is to creating the new technology is easier than figuring out what the impact is. So often we'll just introduce it, see what problems it causes, and then try to react afterwards. But yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, ends are always harder than means. There's no doubt about that. And
yeah,
That's
If
a
I
very
may, the sentiments that Bruno and Michael expressed about, you know, the Enlightenment and human progress, I for the most part I agree with all of that. I think that from my point of view, the Enlightenment is not something that happened solely in the past. I think it's still going on, and we are part of that. And scientists of today are part of that, and politicians of today are part of that. And, you know, progress is not one smooth incline up. It's a roller coaster, but in general, it goes up, in my opinion. And if I could suggest a book, maybe Vladimir, this would be a good book for this quasi book club or whatever it is we're talking about.
Let's do it.
Is a book called Enlightenment Now. And it is about human progress since the 15th or 16th centuries. So
that's by Pinker, right? Steven Pinker.
Yeah, it is.
That sounds like a good suggestion. Let's do it.
We can make it like a sort of book club. Yeah.
Is it available on this? I mean, it's free or you need to buy it? I mean, the book. I
don't know. I don't know if it's free.
Is it in free access on the internet?
Just pirate it if you can't find it. I'm sure we can find a way to pirate it if we can.
LibGen will almost certainly have it. Although, if we're going to discuss that book, by God, I'm going to collect a bunch of the critiques of Pinker and that book, and I'm going to start posting those as well. Because there's a lot of people who have found a lot of flaws in his reasoning in there, and we
now,
need to, if we're gonna be intellectually honest about being philosophers, we got to look at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think in the US we can probably gotta get it on Amazon as well, you know. I think it's very
Craig, are you under the impression that they found that the critiques of his book found difficulty with the statistics?
With just about every part of it has been critiqued by one another, including the misrepresentation of data within it. So okay, well, I'll be interested to see that. Okay.
And I'm sure Amazon is in Russia, isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, we have it, but
yeah,
I was just curious whether or not it's available for free. But anyway, I'll probably.
Like, what's the name of that thing that they have all the books? Project Gutenberg? Is that it?
It won't be in Gutenberg. It's too recent. But it will be on LibGen for those who like to not have to pay for large amounts of books.
LibGen?
Yep, LIBGEN, and it's actually, I believe, based in Russia and possibly in Israel as well. And it's a piracy site, so but you can find textbook. You can find damn near everything there.
We can figure out between all of us. We can figure out how to get this book. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, this is another topic, but maybe for a future day, because I've been having a debate with some people, another forum about intellectual property, whether it should exist or not.
We can talk about it next week. I think. Yeah. Now we've been at it. We've been doing it for a while, so,
Yeah, it's bedtime.
yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Anything else, guys?
Good for me.
But thank you
Yep.
for the beautiful
Maybe-
discussion, guys. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if someone's watching